how do I reframe my mindset when I go into a negotiation?
I think negotiation is a communication skill to find the overlapping positions.
Do you think this is a skill that people neglect in general?
100%.
Really?
100%.
How much of a role does optimism play in successful negotiation?
All your emotional skills will pay you dividends in a negotiation situation. Optimism is hugely relevant.
The toughest negotiator will be yourself. Probably the second toughest negotiation that you're going to have is probably going to be in that unrealistic environment.
It's like to be practiced, to notice all the occasions and to start being more conscious and intentional about deploying the skill.
The other person will respect you more if you do enter a negotiation as opposed to just accept the first terms.
Yeah.
Let's talk about salaries and pay rises.
Yes.
This is something that will be on a lot of people's minds.
Yes. Yes.
Let's talk about negotiation.
Yeah. My favourite topic.
Where should we start then? What constitutes a good negotiator?
What great starting point. I think what constitutes a good negotiator is somebody who is confident and has the right mindset, who does not see the negotiation as an argument and a conflict. They can negotiate in the context of a relationship, because I think that's really important. And who see negotiation as the end of the beginning of something else.
Elaborate on that a bit.
So if you're negotiating, it's like, well, what are you negotiating on?
Yeah.
It's really about getting a resolution to something. So it's the end of something so that you can start the new way forward. And if you can see it like a good negotiator kind of knows what they're doing. They know it's like, what's the war, not the battle. If you see it as a battle, you'll get deadlock and conflict. And most humans don't like conflict and deadlock and disagreements and disappointment. They don't like it. So they usually avoid it.
And we had this conversation before, and that's probably how I would summarise myself as somebody who doesn't. When I go into a negotiation, I'm sort of anticipating conflict. So how do I reframe my mindset when I go into a negotiation that it isn't a conflict, it's focused on the resolution?
Well, I would start fundamentally with the principle that a negotiation is a buying signal. Because if you're negotiating, doesn't equal closure, by the way, but if you're negotiating, somebody's sold something, an idea, a proposition, a product, an idea, an item, they've sold something and they're trying to get closure. Doesn't mean that both parties want the closure, but if you've engaged in the negotiation conversation, it is a signal that parties are interested.
Do you need both parties to be interested in negotiating to have a successful negotiation?
No, you don't, but that's where you can easily end up. I think ultimately you can end up with negotiations either in a lose-lose, a win-lose, a win-win, or there's so much for both parties to win that it's like massively beneficial for both parties. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah.
So you don't need both parties to be in that winning mindset, because one could push the other party to the end of what they're prepared to accept, but they don't need to accept that position, but they just do because most often they're worried about the conflict or their fear, the consequences of not getting closure. It's a very emotional topic.
It's emotional. Is that because of the way it makes people feel?
Yeah. The other kind of philosophy or strategy on negotiation is there should be nothing in writing until you've reached agreement. So what do you prepare for that conversation, which therefore makes it very real-time, live, and stroke panic zone orientated for people?
When I think about a negotiation, I'm sort of thinking in a business context, like people sat around the boardroom or a table, negotiating over something. But you coach this to people
Yep.
all the time, but that's probably not the most common scenario, is it?
No, I would say that's a formal set piece negotiation situation where it's almost more obvious you should be negotiating, and it's usually around the commercial terms or when money is involved. And if you wait to be fit for those scenarios, if you wait and you don't deploy your negotiation skills or even think about all of the opportunities there are to negotiate until you're in those formal situations, you'll never be fit for it. So actually the informal, there's so many things that could be negotiated. So I think what happens is people just end up being negotiated at, or they're not in control. And when I say control, I don't mean, right, I'm in charge, do what I say. I just mean feeling like you know what you're doing. And there's almost like the zone of control, the zone of influence, and the zone of concern. Very often people feel like the negotiation scenario is the zone of zone of concern invading your zone of control. It's like, I've got no control, I don't know what's going on. And a lot of that I think is to do with the fact that people aren't ready, they're not aware. Awareness is everything.
So what do you mean by awareness is everything?
Being aware that somebody sold something to you or you've sold something to them. So awareness of, we're interested, both parties are interested, and therefore we should try and get closure. Do we need to even negotiate? Or many of us buy into ideas and we don't negotiate.
Yeah.
We don't even know we've been influenced by somebody. So you're either the influencer or the person being influenced. So being aware that actually it is appropriate for this to be a negotiation conversation. I think negotiation is a communication skill to find the overlapping positions.
And I'm getting this doesn't just apply to business. This is everyday life as well, right? So as you said, you mentioned relationship earlier on.
Yeah.
There are multiple negotiations in a relationship to have a successful relationship.
Yeah.
So do you think this is a skill that people neglect in general?
100%.
Really?
100%. So that's why they end up feeling the uncomfortableness or out of control feeling, because they worry about the relationship. And so you end up ceding control to the other person because of the fear of upsetting because of the fear of that relationship and the consequences of that relationship. The relationship sort of gets in the way of what a good outcome looks like. So, which is why I'm saying it's really emotional.
Yeah.
Because it's all based on how you feel. You know, the toughest negotiator you'll ever come up against
Donald Trump.
is yourself.
Oh, what? Really?
Yeah. In 9 times out of 10, the toughest negotiator is wrestling with your mindset. So I should have said that at the beginning. That's what makes a really good negotiator, is not negotiating with yourself or selves. It's like, what's my inner voice saying to me?
Interesting. And holding you back from.
Yeah, exactly. Going, you don't upset them. Give them what they want. I can give them some stuff, so why don't I just give them to get it over and done with?
This is really interesting because those words or those phrases like don't upset them, like, all comes back to conflict. So often I think that a lot of people would put themselves in a worse position in order to satisfy others and then probably have regrets afterwards.
Yeah. And Maya Angelou's quote is now ringing in my ears. Doesn't matter what you say or what you do, but people remember how it felt when they were negotiating with you. And if you're negotiating in the context of a relationship, that feeling is lasting. So you'll then approach the next negotiation with that person or in a situation like that with emotional baggage. And that's an example. So that's when I was saying awareness is everything. You need to even be aware that that's how you feel. Because if you're not aware how you feel, you won't understand how your feelings affect your behaviours and your non-verbal communication.
Yeah. So what are some of the starting points then? So if you're going into a client meeting and you're trying to improve their negotiation skills, where do you start?
So I try and keep it quite simple. Like, keep it simple, because that's usually the best. Life is complicated enough as it is. If you want to be more masterful and have better outcomes in your negotiations, I think if you can fundamentally answer these 4 questions, you are setting yourself up for more success. So the first question is, and this is all in preparation, then you have to be able to access this live. But we'll start off with in preparation. So first of all, to mitigate negotiating with self, you need to actually remind yourself as to why you should feel confident in this negotiation. Don't worry. Stop focusing on what goes against you. Focus on what goes for you. Not over the other person, but just so you set yourself up for success. So think of all the good reasons that you're in the, hence this is a buying signal. They're interested, otherwise we wouldn't be entertaining and having this conversation. So that's step 1. Why should I feel confident and on the front foot and feel good? Because typically most people feel, irrespective of who sold what or whose idea this was, most people feel like the other person has the power. So if you both feel like that, it's actually much more equal than you think it is.
Yeah.
But usually what's happening is your brain is protecting you from all the difficult conversations that might be coming. So you think about, I need to be ready for all the negatives, aka negotiating with self.
Yes. Okay.
So that's kind of philosophy 1. Stop doing that, because that's self-sabotage or negotiation sabotage.
Yeah.
Very easy to sit here and chat about it. It's very hard to do. The higher the stake the scenario,
Of course.
the more rigorously you need to hold yourself to account for, hang on a second, am I negotiating with myself? What language am I using? What are my inner thoughts? And dial up the reasons why you should feel confident in the conversation. So, for example, if you don't know the person you're negotiating, don't worry that you don't know them. Go, well, there's no emotional baggage.
Yeah.
If you do know them and it was a tough one last time, well, they're coming back. Or I know how they roll. I know how they played last time. So I know how the sort of role and the positioning they will adopt this time. So you think about the thing that goes for you, not against you. Easy to say, hard to do. You have to have a confident, optimistic, resilient mindset to do that.
How much of a role does optimism play in successful negotiation?
So we're back to the emotions, because optimism is an emotional skill. So it plays all your emotional skills will pay you dividends in a negotiation situation. Optimism is hugely relevant. So optimism is the most commonly associated characteristic with highly effective people. People who can negotiate well tend to be quite effective in business, in life in general. So optimism is about bounce back ability and resilience. That makes people optimistic. Optimism, you need to have a positive mindset, because in negotiations, there will be deadlock, there will be disappointment. So you need to think creatively about what the opportunities are and how can I break the deadlock. So you have to be solution orientated and a problem solver. And people who are not optimistic tend to go, well, there you go, there's a problem, can't get around that. So that resilience is needed and bounce back ability. You need to be creative and solution orientated. And also, because it's a communication skill and humans mirror each other, you need to be positive and not negative in the mood, managing the mood in the moment, your own, because if you feel negative about the scenario, then you're going to be, it will impact your ambition and what you ask for.
I'm picturing this now, actually, and how I would feel if it felt like a conflict. You would feel more defensive.
Yeah.
But if you were having a really good conversation, it was happier, you're probably both more likely to come to an agreement.
Totally.
Somebody said something to me recently as well, which stuck with me, because we typically ask for our existing clients for referrals, but it's very, very hard. People don't often like doing it. But somebody said to me the most effective way that he's found to get a client referral is just after the point of sale.
Yeah.
So when that person has agreed to sign up to be your client, at that point, ask them, is there anybody else who might benefit from your services?
I mean, pick your moment, right? Do what is an emotionally intelligent thing to do. But actually, what you've said there at the point, like after the point of sale, is what I was saying before. So sell first, then negotiate. And again, I should have said this at the beginning, but what makes really good negotiators are people that ask.
Yeah.
Like if you don't ask, don't get. If you don't ask, you don't get. So you have to have the confidence to ask.
Yeah.
So, but also the emotional intelligence when to ask. It's actually really depends on what you're asking for referrals on, but it's quite hard to ask people for referrals when they haven't benefited from your services.
I know, yeah. That's the way I looked at it
So
too.
you've got to find the moment. Because a lot of people, if you're asking for a referral, will just go, yeah, yeah, yeah. And then you don't get it.
Yeah.
Because it wasn't the appropriate time to ask. So going back to like, how do you get yourself ready? Confidence and having the right mindset and a negotiator's mindset is step one. Step two, and both of these philosophies and questions, big questions you need to ask yourself before you even think about what you're going to ask for. So philosophy 2 is to anticipate in the scenario and the situation, what curveballs am I going to have to deal with? Because if you, like, a lot of people feel the tension and attack is very often the best form of defence. So you can feel attacked by your counterpart in the negotiation conversation. Sometimes they know they're doing it, sometimes they don't know they're doing it, but they're still doing it. That's an awareness thing there. So it's not that clever to think about what curveballs you're going to chuck at the other person to unnerve them. But it is smart and intelligent to think about, well, what am I going to have to face? Because if you don't recognise them in the moment, you're likely to treat the tactics as real, and then you'll feel more of them. And the other person will feel like they have power over you. And if they feel like they have more power over you, they're going to push you more. So you probably know that subconsciously. So it's better to anticipate the curveballs. Classic curveballs are comparing you to competition or promising you something in the future or niggling at your, sort of pulling the thread on your idea. So you go, no, it's okay. Or complaining about something in the past, assuming that it's going to be like that in the future. Like, those are classic things that people would do in the context of a negotiation. Why do they do it? To try and make themselves feel like they have more power.
And how do you respond to that?
You have to push back on them.
Do you?
And you absolutely need to communicate in an unsaid way that you'll know that's what they're trying to do and it's not working. That's how you play the game.
Can you give me an example of how you actually communicate that?
There is no playbook on it, because it would always depend on your judgment and how it's come up in the situation and when it comes up in the situation. But first of all, you've got to recognise it's going on, be aware of it in the moment. If someone is comparing you to the competition, making a comparison, it's why would they want to make a comparison to your competitors, especially in a commercial negotiation? What would be the purpose?
To unsettle you.
Yeah. And when you're unsettled, what's likely to happen?
You get a bit flustered.
And when you get a bit flustered, what are you likely to do?
Probably cave in.
You'll cave in, right?
Yeah.
So that is literally the purpose of the other person. It's to get a discount or more of a discount or something for nothing, to get a concession, because when you're rattled and unnerved, you're more likely to have something to make this horrible thing go away, right? That is that is the design. So if somebody is behaving in that way or saying something like that, you just need to call them out on it, going, oh, well, I can see you're making a comparison. It's clearly up to you. You're entirely entitled to making a comparison, but it's not going to change this situation. So just call it out, because you end up diffusing.
Yeah.
It's like you've taken the wind out of, that's now not going to work. It's like
You caught them out.
you caught them out.
Yeah.
But it's done in an emotionally intelligent way.
Yeah.
So it's communicating, that's not working, but now let's get on with a sensible grown-up conversation. Do you see what I mean? It's like, move on. It's not working. I know what you're doing, and it's not it's not having an impact. So I know you're trying to rattle me, but it's actually not gonna change my position. So the gameplay tends to come up in terms of the timing and the stages of a negotiation just before you start to soften you. Makes complete sense when I'm saying it like this, doesn't it?
It does,
it's
yeah.
Like, it's like, before you get going, let me just put you in your box. Let me just put you in the, nobody puts baby in the corner. Let me just put you in the corner so you know who's boss in this conversation. Sometimes the people, if they feel more powerful, that's what they do. And they know they're doing it, but if they might just, it might be systemic in the environment. So just before you start negotiating, typically things like that will come up. They will also come up when there's deadlock, and they will also come up at the end.
Do people often do these things as well because they are nervous?
Yeah. Attack is the best form of defense.
Okay.
So, and it's not that smart to be tactical, but it's really smart to anticipate what tactics you're going to have to deal with, because then you're ready. And if you're ready, you'll feel more confident. If you feel more confident, you ask for more, and it will be ultimately better. So what I try and train people in is to approach this conflicty, difficult conversation in a more for more mindset. More for you, more for them. Okay, so get your head in the right place first. Then think about, well, what am I going to have to deal with? And how am I going to deal with it? And then really negotiating is about finding an overlap in positions. So what am I going to ask for is fundamental. And if usually people are prepared with the first ask, but then not the rest of the asks. Because if it's a finding an overlap in positions, then you need to have more positions, not just... So in selling, you need leverage to build value as to why your idea is a really good idea and why they should buy into it. That I would call leverage. In a negotiation, you need levers to find the overlap in negotiation, levers or variables, things that you can negotiate. And you need to be ready with your opening position, but also then, well, what happens if they say no to that? Because how often do you say yes to the opening position in a negotiation? But no, if you know that it's a negotiation, because that's step one, to even know you're in a negotiation.
Yeah. Well, the answer to that should be you wouldn't accept the first thing.
Should be.
Should be, exactly.
Correct. Depends on confidence.
Yeah.
Because if someone says, well, just discount it by X, use discount as the example, in order to get closure, most people go, okay, well, I thought they'd ask for a discount, so I can just give it to them. But that would not be demonstrating much ambition. But then you have to get to the psychology of, well, what's stopping them pushing back and challenging? And it's often a confidence thing. Or they don't have any options and they haven't done good preparation. So first, this is what I'm saying. First of all, you need to be, I feel on the front foot. I know why I should be confident, not so I'm more powerful than them, just so I'm holding my ground and mitigating, negotiating with myself. Then, right, okay, what challenges and curveballs am I going to have to deal with? I always advocate, depends on what type of situation you're in. If you're negotiating in the context of a relationship, I don't advocate to be tactical because it gets in the way. It causes more deadlock, more disagreement, more disappointment, more frustration, more inertia. It causes inefficiency. And our whole philosophy is negotiating comes at the end of the beginning. I'd much rather people just got on with what needs to be got on with than they spend all their time embroiled in inefficient backwards, forwards. Very often I think people aren't even aware that that's going on. Or they blame, they're so difficult to deal with. Well, actually, it could be you're not enabling yourself the conversation.
How often do we, with our partners, you finally talk about the difficult topic?
Yeah.
And then that puts it to bed and you move forwards and you're both happier.
Yeah.
But for a long time, you've just sat there worrying about how to address it,
Yeah.
concerned about the conflict,
Yeah.
not wanting to bring it up,
Yeah.
but probably both silently struggling.
Yeah.
And then you have that conversation.
Yeah.
And I think it's a lot easier, I would say, to sort of be more open. I want to use the word mean, but like you sometimes like in that mindset where you're nervous, things come out of your mouth. It's a lot easier for those things to come out of your mouth with your boyfriend or girlfriend than it maybe is with a professional contact.
Because you feel psychologically more safe.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Because of the relationship.
Yeah.
So that's why relationships really matter in negotiations. I think it's a Churchill quote. Pretty sure it's a Churchill quote. More jaw, less war.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, yeah.
Because communication oils the wheels of the relationship, right? It's so fundamental, which is why I think it's not a process. A lot of people think about a negotiation as a process and a very formal thing, which is why they only associate it with that kind of deal, do the deal. But it's in everyday scenarios and situations.
I said Donald Trump earlier on, and I think that everybody that I can think of would anticipate a negotiation being like the way that he's just handled these tariffs, which is go big, go bold, and then like negotiate down. But that's probably not realistic, is it? About how most negotiations actually happen. Like, what would be? I know we're going through like the how to prepare it, but is it good to sort of like disclose what you want first of all? Like people talk about putting your cards on the table, and some people like try to keep their cards close to their chest. What's a good tactic there?
Well, I'd say it's not a tactic; it's strategy.
Okay.
So tactics, I think, are games that are designed to unnerve.
Yeah. Okay.
You have to have a strategy, because there are fundamentally, I think you can categorize negotiations into 3 types of situations. There's a one-off situation where there's no relationship. There's an ongoing situation where there is a relationship. It could be the beginning of one, could be a long-term development relationship. And then there's one when you're in genuine partnership. And you really know, that's the psychologically safe one, where you really know your counterpart, they know you really well, you trust each other, you want the best for each other, ultimately. It's so fascinating. First of all, if we're going to talk about situations like Trump-style negotiations, we are only fed in the media what is designed to be a news story. So, fake news. It might be fake, it might not be, but we do not know what is going on behind the scenes, and is there an overlap in positions being discussed? We just don't know that. We are painted the picture that is designed to sell news. So, I don't know. It would appear that the way he negotiates is to go really ambitious and then backtrack. And some people would say that's not a good thing to do. Some people will say, well, it's working. It's getting the conversation. At least there's progress being made. Don't want to be political about it, because it's not about politics. It's about observing what's going on.
Yeah.
But if there is no relationship to speak of, and there's no ongoing context, you shouldn't really worry about the relationship at all, and you should just drive to win, and not to win at their expense, but to actually not really care whether they accept or they don't. It's entirely up to you. You just want to win. What you get out of this, what you need to get out of it, because you don't need to worry about the relationship. There's no ongoing context, and you just need to make sure you get what you need from this negotiation. There are actually very few situations like that in business and in the real world. Not in the real world, in business and generally in life, because there's we're social creatures, and there's a context of an ongoing situation, especially in the workplace, especially with friends, colleagues, family. There's an ongoing situation. So it is better. There's less value if you're only fighting for one part of the pie. In an ongoing situation where there is an ongoing context, it is better to make sure that you win and they win as well. Yeah. Because it won't remember what you said or did, it will remember how it felt. So if countries, like trade even does what it says in the tin, trade,
Yeah.
there is an ongoing context. You should be trading. So it's agreeing the terms of trading going forward. If you have really terrible, outrageous trading conditions, there's not going to be much. You might have really high tariffs, really low volume. Well, who's that helping?
Yeah.
So it depends what the purpose is and what you're trying, and the objective of what you're trying to achieve. The thing is, if it feels very acrimonious and one-sided, then there's less like desire to find the overlap in positions.
Yeah.
It's really fascinating when you dig into it. So it's much better for an ongoing context to be prepared, literally, to ask for things that you want and be prepared to concede things that are either less important to you or cost you what you didn't want to do.
Yeah.
So you still prepare from your perspective, but these are the things that are really important to me and the things that I'm prepared to concede to get the yes to the things that are really important to me. And so, is it wrong? That's, again, one of the massive challenges with negotiation. It's hugely nuanced. There's no right or wrong, and you'll never really know. You'll never really know exactly what the other side could do or push for. So it's very nuanced, which is why the feelings is so important. I can't remember what we're saying. So, if you put a really outrageous ask on the table and you don't offer anything in return, the other party will be less willing to move. So make it harder.
Yeah.
But it doesn't mean someone's got to start negotiations.
Exactly.
Otherwise, you're just dancing, not negotiating. And it gets, the less jaw, the more war.
Yeah.
So who's to say it's wrong to do that? Depends what ultimately.
At least it brought two people to the same table. Yeah.
At least they're talking. So as painful as it was to watch Zelensky, Trump, Vance.
Yeah.
In the, I think it was the Sun or the Express, renamed the Oval Office, or the White House. They renamed it the Fight House. It was very uncomfortable to watch, and it was a very painful episode of just tactics backwards and forwards, or actually tactics one side and like conceding to them the other side. But actually, ultimately, they have been able to secure an overlap in positions, because that was all about the minerals deal.
Yeah. How frustrated do you get in those moments where, like, you're watching that on TV? Are you like shouting at the TV, being like, "This is how you should be doing it"?
I am just observing. I'm not saying frustrated. It's more observing and disappointed that we look up to these leaders of the world, and our expectation is that we can learn from them and their higher powers, and they should be inspirational. And it was just, really, none of us should have ever seen that.
No.
It was like, don't wash your dirty linen in public. But it was by design and enabled because of the response. So, it was more of a sinking, upset feeling of, my goodness, what would chance the rest of us stand if that's the powers that guide our that manage our lands for us.
And then what we see on TV, so educating other people about how you... luckily, most people look at that and say, it's a comedy sketch.
Do they?
Well, I'd like to think so, but...
I know. We'd like to think, but very educated people can sometimes behave.
Yeah.
And it's, is it naive and stupid to behave in that way? Well, if it gets you what you want, is it so stupid? A lot of people say to me, "Oh, my clients, they're so difficult. They don't know what they're doing. They're such idiots." Is it? Are they that idiotic if they behave in that way and then they get what they want? And you concede?
Is that their strategy? Yeah.
I don't know if that's that stupid, really. It is what it is. But this then comes down to the emotions and how you're interpreting. Exactly. And that's why it all comes back to awareness. So it's honestly, it's the most longest conversation, this topic, because it's nuanced, it's complicated, it's emotional, it involves humans and communication, and being really skilled at it takes lots of preparation and a lot of self-control in the moment and presence, and being able to read and interpret the situation, to know what you're doing, to be able to, and like be able to analyze and judge and process what's going on live. It's complicated. It's really complicated.
You said there about preparation, practice. How do you, if you go through some of these steps, have you also, we did 2 of the steps. Do you have 2 more to do? Did you say a 4-step
So there's
process?
4 steps. So
Yeah.
it's like, get your head in the right place.
Yeah.
Anticipate and be ready to like think about what you're going to do or say when someone's behaving in that tactical way. Properly plan what your starting position is, and then know how you're going to break deadlock.
Okay.
Which is, okay, how am I going to navigate my way to closure? I need to have other options. Not that I go, well, I'll take that one off the table and now I'll put that one on the table. I need to have, that's the leverage.
Yes. Okay.
Not the leverage, the levers, right? I need to have a list of other things that are disproportionately important to me and valuable to me, and then things I'm prepared to concede to get them to say, to facilitate them to be able to say yes to what I want.
So how do we practice this?
Well, first of all, you've got to be prepared and write that. I'm a big believer in write it down. If you've got it in your head, it's a bit like, you know how I love to talk about sport. If you were preparing we were talking about tennis just before we started recording. If you were Alcaraz or Djokovic or Nadal before you're prepared to, he's retired, hasn't he? Any of the Jack Draper, if you're about to go out on the court or in preparation for a Grand Slam, they're not relentlessly honing their craft in front of the mirror, or just sitting there and going, okay, so when the serve comes like this, and when the ball comes like that, I'm going to hit it. Like, they are practicing relentlessly under pressure. The way they practice for the Grand Slams is to do all the other tournaments. It's like constant, relentless practice, honing your skills, getting feedback, practicing under pressure, recording yourself.
That's hard.
You've got to make the time for it,
Yeah.
and know that it makes a big difference. So, and then there's preparation, then there's doing it, and there's getting feedback, right? Knowing, well, what worked, what didn't, what would I do differently next time? The more rigor you put into all of that philosophy, the better outcomes you'll get.
But how do you practice the doing part? So let's say, for example, I've now learned the steps to a successful negotiation.
Yeah.
But I need to then give myself, I don't really want to just utilize those in like the most important meeting for my business.
Yeah.
I want to do it. I want to practice it like 10 times beforehand.
Yeah.
Are there environments where you should try to practice it? Should you practice it with your colleagues, your partner? Should you just treat every interaction that you have as a negotiation, even if it's when you're going in to buy a new pair of shoes, for example?
Yeah. Well, if you don't ask, you don't get. So all of the above, right? So for the formal set piece ones, alignment is really important. So you should be aligned. You should actually have preparation written down. You should make sure you've got that signed off, because otherwise you have to propose. They said, no, okay, back to the drawing board. Right, get that agreed. Now go back again. It's really inefficient. So getting aligned and joined up and practicing, getting a colleague. So you be them, I'm going to be me. We're gonna practice this, or you be me and I'll be them, because you'll learn as much by being them.
Yeah.
Role play. People hate role playing.
I've done it a few times before.
It's like, I haven't got time for that.
Do you do that with your clients?
Yeah.
Do you?
And everyone's like, oh, I'm not ready. No, I'm not ready. Or I force them to do it.
How do they feel
And
afterwards?
they always, God, that's so useful. I'm so pleased I did that. I learned from doing it. Sometimes I record it, play it back to them, because there's all of the body language, the tone of voice, the spotting the tactics, the how you dealt with them. Were you even aware there was deadlock? The way people are proposing. So there's the preparation, and there's the live doing it bit.
And you said earlier on that the toughest negotiator will be yourself, but the probably the second toughest negotiation that you're going to have is probably going to be in that unrealistic environment where
Yes.
where I'm doing it with you, or
Yes.
you're doing it with a work colleague, because the amount of pressure that you feel
Yes.
of self-consciousness
Yes.
is so much higher.
Yeah, and you'll be your own worst critic.
Yeah.
And if you're an achiever and you want to perform, you'll want to do better. So yeah, but that's the formal practice. But then it's like to be practiced, to notice all the occasions, and to start being more conscious and intentional about deploying the skill. Because there's so many occasions. It's almost as if you go, maybe it's not formal end-to-end negotiating, but if you even think about your whole week, what do I spend my week doing? And then break it down and think, well, in these meetings and in that situation, that's the application for negotiation. In that situation, that's the application. Oh, there was a tactic that I got, could have dealt with that better. I didn't recognise the deadlock there. Or that's an email. Oh dear, there's an email there. That's an opportunity to pick up the phone and have a conversation.
Yeah.
So just start to think about all the activities you do in a week and just think, where could I deploy? Where are the negotiation occasions and opportunities? Start thinking about it.
You said something in the last episode we did about being a master delegator. That's a negotiation too, isn't it? When you say, how can I convince somebody else to do this for me?
Yeah. Well, the convincing bit is the selling.
Yeah.
So that's just that. Interestingly, the convincing, like, you might be able to convince them and they just do it, and you don't need to negotiate. You only need to negotiate if there's deadlock. Otherwise, we don't need to negotiate. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
So, if you are delegating and there is loads on their workload, you might need to negotiate. So I'll tell you what, if you agree to do this piece of work today, then next time there's a piece of work, I'll commit to do it, which is not a future promise, because a future promise would be a tactic. Or it could be, I'll accept I'll accept the change of deadline. So if you do the work, then I'll extend the deadline to this. That's a negotiation. Now, in the context of a relationship and an ongoing and wanting the best for everybody, you shouldn't, when you're delegating, just go, do that for me. Just do it. Because that's one-sided, nothing back in return.
Yeah.
It doesn't feel good for the other person. There's nothing for them. They just have to do it. They don't need to accept that. Depends on hierarchies and power, doesn't it? But it would be good for both parties to say, look, I tell you what, if you do the piece of work, then I'll accept a longer lead time, which means it will produce a better quality outcome for the client. That's a negotiation. It's not a commercial one, but it's a time-bound one or a resource one. But yes, you need negotiation skills around delegating, around agreeing what's going to be dropped, around agreeing what's going to be delayed. All of that stuff is negotiable. Resources, budgets, project scope, workload.
Yeah.
There's like everyday application for this stuff.
Literally, I can think now as you're saying that about so many opportunities in my work week for me to try to negotiate with in some capacity.
Yeah. And the higher the stake, the more rigorous preparation.
Yep.
And if it's a low stake scenario, just being confident that this is the right thing to do, to make sure that you're ready. Well, what's the classic task? Oh, I haven't got time. Time waits for no man. Would be a good response to that. Look, whether we like it or not, the piece of work's got to be done. So we need to find a solution that works for both of us. Okay, so if you agree to do the activity, then I will give you an extension of X amount of time. And I'm being very intentional in my language. It is conditional. Not because I'm being difficult, and there's no what I would call weak speak in there. There's no extra filler phrases or tone that make it sound like it's not slam dunk. So it's none of like, look, I tell you what, I'll give you a bit of an extension if you agree to pick up that work.
Yeah.
The wrong way round. and B, with extra, it sounds like it's negotiable phrases.
Yeah, okay. Whilst we're talking about negotiating, let's talk about salaries and pay rises.
Yes.
This is something that will be on a lot of people's minds.
Yes. Yes. What would you like to talk about in the context of those? How should people go about doing it?
Yeah, where do we start? How do you go about doing it? How do you go about doing it, which is in a very like it starts on the good foot, on the right foot.
So, classically following those 4 thoughts. And first of all, before you negotiate your pay rise, you should have sold your services. So you shouldn't enter the you shouldn't just give me a pay rise, which is literally, I'm expecting a pay rise. I've been doing this role for X amount of time. So you need to deploy emotional intelligence as to why you can justify. Justification builds value before the negotiation. But let's say that part of the conversation is done and there's good justification for the pay rise, which means you need to do your homework and pick your moment and make sure that you feel confident enough to, so we need to go back through why should I, like, I've justified my pay rise, I've got plenty of track record to prove that I've earned this opportunity, and now I'm going to have the confidence to ask. There's as much skin in the game for them as there is in for me. It's better for them to promote me than have to pay recruitment fees. That's getting head in the right place to mitigate negotiating with self. Somebody who's asking is demonstrating ambition. This is a good thing. Okay, then I need to think about, well, what pushbacks will I have to deal with? Not now. Now's not the right time. But then if it's genuine, that's okay. But if they're unfair to derail you, and sometimes people do that internally. So that's about dealing with what challenges or pushbacks am I going to have to face into, and how can I demonstrate that I'm not going to entertain those in a career appropriate managing way. And then, okay, so what is my ambitious ask? So the definition of, I haven't talked about this yet, right? The definition of ambition is highest believable position that's got credibility. So asking for a 100% pay rise is going to get laughed out the door. Asking for a 50% pay rise is going to get, like, what is appropriately ambitious? And that will always be different. Excuse me. So, and that's the definition. But you should also plan for what's your ideal position. So what's the sort of high position? So I've got the highest believable that's got credibility. I've got a position beneath that, which is ideal. Because in order to give your ideal a chance, you have to start with something ahead of that. Mm-hmm. AKA Trump, tariffs, highest believable, maybe not so believable. But that's what he's doing. He's going highest believable position to give his ideal position a chance.
Yeah. He calls it anchoring in his book.
Yeah, correct.
So you first start high. That's my starting position, and then you just negotiate down, which I think a lot of people understand that concept.
They do understand that concept, and it's anchoring is what you would do in a one-off scenario and be extreme because you don't care what they think about you and there's no ongoing context. You have to judge what's the right thing to do situationally. So there is a different approach and style to use depending on, is this a one-off? Is this an ongoing context? Because if you want them to want to work with you, because people want to work with people that they trust. Like, that's another whole area for us to unpack. So highest believable position that's got credibility. You also need to have an ideal position, and you also need to have the low, which is the bottom end of your happy zone. And I always advise people not to consciously plan the walk away or the financial no.
Okay.
Because if you say to your brain, negotiation is especially its increase, is going to be an emotional topic and a high stakes scenario. So if you plan for the no and you're up against somebody and it's a difficult negotiation, it's a difficult situation, you're more likely to go, okay, fine, I'll just accept my walk away position. You're saying to your brain it's okay to go there. It's not like all of the behaviours that you'll demonstrate when it's not. I'm not going less than that. You reposition yourself to a bottom end of your happy zone.
When you say the walk away position, is that the position where you are in a negotiation and then you walk out the room?
Yeah.
Or is that when you walk away and accept it?
No, walk out the room.
Walk out the room, okay.
Not acceptable position.
Yeah.
That is not acceptable. So instead of planning for what is not acceptable,
Yeah.
you go, what is the bottom end of what I'm happy with?
Yeah.
So I'm not saying you shouldn't know that. You should go, I know that. La, 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 la. Ignore. Right. I will be disappointed if it's less than this.
Yeah.
So that's the low. The high is, I'll be really happy with this.
Yep.
Poker face, not showing it. and the highest is the highest believable that's got credibility.
Yeah.
And for every single lever, you need to plan all of those. So,
And it comes back to writing it down
Yeah.
and really understanding
Yeah.
what it is that you, going into that negotiation, you want at every step of those.
Totally. And all of the optionality, all the options. And then also you should be planning. So you should have how much increase you want, what else you can ask for. It might be more holiday, might be flexible working hours. Like what else do you want? And what are you prepared to do in return? And so different things that you want and different things that you're prepared to offer. So you may be prepared to do mentoring for the team, or you may be prepared to do extra events than you weren't planning to do. So you trade those off.
Yeah.
So if you agree to an increase of this, then I will go and do 3 more events in this quarter.
This is in the context of a pay rise, where you sort of, if you're already working for a company, you know what your current salary is.
Yeah.
You might know what your colleagues earn or what the next rung up looks like.
Yeah.
Or what the average pay rise percentage would look like.
Yeah.
What if you're negotiating for a new job and you don't necessarily know what they are willing to pay? How do you start there?
Depends if you've got a recruiter operating on your behalf,
Yeah.
or you're doing it firsthand. I mean, it's tempting to go extreme, but this is an ongoing context. So I would try and find out what the bandwidth. They always do the research, and usually what happens in a recruitment scenario is that the person offering the role becomes I'll give you this. They become the person that concedes, and the person that's asking, and the new person being recruited becomes, well, give me this. What are you going to give me? And both parties do it one-sided. So if you don't ask, you're not going to get. So it should be, right, if you agree to this, then I'm prepared to do that. But you need to find out. You can't go into the negotiation cold, right?
Yeah.
There needs to be some selling done first. So you need to find out what's negotiable, like what options are there, but also ask some questions. So what is important to you? These are and the other person should be asking what's important to you, because it's an ongoing this is like we're trying to work together for the long term. These are the factors that are important to me. These are the factors that are important to you. But if you're unsure, get them to go first.
How do you get them to go first?
What's the package?
That's the question to ask. What's the package?
So what are the elements of the package?
Yeah.
Then you've got the starting point. And you have to decide whether it's negotiable or not. A lot of salary, it depends situationally, right? Depends on the organisation. Some packages are literally not negotiable.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
So there may be other things that are also important to you that are negotiable.
Yeah.
Again, if you don't ask, you don't get. So, yeah, but you've got to be emotionally intelligent, pick your timings, make sure you've been sold in and they're really interested in you before you go, right, so I want to talk about days off on a Friday. We haven't even agreed that Because then the impression you're casting is not, it's a complicated one though, isn't it? Because you're trying to set yourself up for success for the future, be ambitious, but it should be situationally appropriate.
Is there an argument to say that when you're negotiating, the other person will respect you more if you do enter a negotiation as opposed to just accept the first terms?
Yeah. You're demonstrating ambition, you're not a pushover.
And certainly if you're going for a sales role as well,
Yeah.
you have to be negotiating for that.
Yeah. And also, if they say no, you decide. Is that acceptable to me? Is that not acceptable to me?
That's a really interesting point. And just talking about interviewing for a moment, I always say to people when they're interviewing, don't forget it's a two-way process.
Yeah.
They're interviewing you. You've applied for the job in the first place, but they're interviewing you. But also, you're working out whether you want to work there.
Yeah.
So you have to interview them too.
Yeah.
But I think a lot of us go into interviews, maybe like the earlier stages of our career as well, when it's like, oh, I want that job. You might go in there and not like the people that you're in the room with. But I think you might have already sold yourself on the idea of, I'm interviewing for somewhere else, so I'm therefore leaving my old job.
Yeah.
And I need to get this job now because I've already committed to leaving there and I want to go here.
Yeah.
And if I don't get this, I feel like I've failed.
Yeah.
But actually, it's all.
Yeah.
It's a situation.
It's a situation, and there's pressure for both parties to get it right.
Yeah.
It's not just one side. That's a really good example of it's not just one-sided. But if you go into it thinking it's one-sided and thinking the other person has the upper hand, is more giving them the upper hand in your mind.
Yeah, yeah.
It's another interesting concept. If you get the fact that before any negotiation, someone should have sold first, otherwise why are we negotiating and what are we negotiating over? There is a seller or an asker and a receiver or a buyer. If you accept the fact that somebody needs to have sold an idea or a proposition first. But when you're negotiating, it's irrelevant which role you play. Are you the asker or the receiver? There's challenge for both parties.
Yeah.
Is recruiting somebody and training them up is an investment in time, effort, energy. You have to be prepared to accept that they're not going to be up to speed for a period, like yada yada yada. They have to new equipment, like it's a long list, right? Pay the recruiter, yada yada yada. So you don't want to risk investing in somebody. So it's both parties are under pressure. But I think when you go into it only thinking about yourself, then you miss all of that perspective.
Yeah.
And knowledge is power.
Yeah.
Right?
That's a really good point, actually. And putting ourselves in their shoes and understanding the challenges that they have. And again, this is all common sense when you start to talk about it. Like in investing, there's a philosophy which talks about the rational investor. Well, what investor is rational? When they see the market going down, they want to sell. That's not rational at all. So, and we're talking about this in this context here, which is everything here is all your preparation is done with the rational person in mind.
Yeah.
But I think when you're in that situation, you have to continuously remind yourself in those negotiations, put yourself in the other person's shoes.
Yeah.
Why are they here? Do they want to be here?
Yeah.
Or do we just want a quick resolution to this?
Yeah. Well, see it, read it, play it. That's what I say. See it, read it, play it. And also be present in the conversation. And that needs self-control and being aware of what's actually happening.
Yeah.
Because if you're noticing body language or they're looking too eager or not very eager, like notice what's going on, because it can give you a read as to where you should go next. When we feel really emotional, we cannot be rational. And you need to be able to access your rational brain so you can make the right decisions live in the moment as to where you should go next and what you should table. The only way to really find out whether this is going to work is table offers, and they'll accept them or they won't.
Yeah.
That's the only way to find out whether it's going to work or not. But that takes really good preparation. If you only go in with one variable, then you're going to get stuck very quickly, and you only end up then, if you want to get closure, you'll end up conceding or getting concessions. And that's not negotiating. That's just getting your own way or giving in. So it's a skill. It's really skilled.
It's also fun.
Good. It should treat it like a game. Not as in a negative thing, but...
I was with an entrepreneur on Wednesday, and he was saying that it's the one thing that he loves the most is the negotiation and then the outcome. Because, and as you say, it's the end of the beginning.
Yeah.
So for him, he's negotiating contracts for the next few years.
Yeah.
So this is a new partnership that they're creating.
Yeah.
And he loves that process.
Yeah.
And he actually isn't. He was head of a sales team, but he sort of got up there for a managerial position. He started his own company, but now that the stakes are very high because it's his business, and he's negotiating. And it's like a drug, he says. It's like, it's addictive. He loves it. And he loves the outcome that you get at the end of it.
But that's growth, and it's a performance thing.
Yeah.
Definitely. It's about those formal occasions, but all of the other occasions as well.
I mean, in another scenario, like using an analogy, it's like the early stages of dating. It's the getting to know each other. It's like the flirting. It's the foreplay or whatever. Yeah. That's what it is.
Yeah, it is. It's like you're sussing each other. You're sussing each other out. But they just remind you, before you negotiate, you've sold first.
Yeah.
Or they've sold you, or you've sold them.
Yeah.
Otherwise, why are we negotiating?
Yeah.
But it also doesn't equal closure. So if we talked a little bit about walkaways before, if you've tried everything and you've tabled loads of offers and it's not working, then as a last resort, in order to find out their walkaway, you pressure test their walkaway by walking away. Does that make sense?
Yes, I think so. So does that become tactical at this point?
It's a strategy. So tactics are bad, right?
Okay.
Tactics get in the way. So it could be used on you tactically. You're not saying, yes, I'm going.
Yeah.
Because the chances are, like, if the deal's still working and you say you're going, no, don't go.
Yes.
Okay. So it can be used tactically, but I don't advocate being tactical.
Yeah.
I advocate being in control and knowing what you're doing.
Yeah.
So the purpose of testing the walkaway is to find out, have I got to their walkaway position?
Yeah.
So by doing it consciously and intentionally, and this is why it's a last resort, if they say that's it, no, you've then found out their walkaway position, and you can choose, do you carry on walking yourself, or do you go, fine, let's change the position? But then sometimes people's pride or their ego get in the way and they fall on their sword. No, I don't want to lose face. And what? Just like, if it's negotiable, negotiate.
Yeah.
If it's not, don't. But also, it's a last resort. You don't want to be the sort of person that puts a deal on the table, the other person says no, and you go, right, that's it, taking my bat and ball home. Should be very annoying people to do business with. So if things are negotiable, negotiate. Negotiation is finding the overlapping positions, making conditional asks. If you do this, then I'm prepared to offer in that in return. And if you've tried and exhausted your whole list, pressure test the walkaway by saying, well, there's a proposition on the table that I believe works for both parties. So I look forward to hearing from you. And then hold your nerve.
That's the hard part, right? That's the really hard part.
And don't leak weakness and desire. Because to a trained person, they spot it. But usually most people are only thinking about themselves and they're not even noticing.
I know.
So they'll be going, oh, I don't know, this is not working for me. They won't even know that what's going on. So see it, read it, play it. It's a really complex, advanced, emotionally intelligent, skillful thing to be. It's like human engineering, this stuff. It's
This
really
is
complex.
One of the things that I've written down and highlighted here is emotional intelligence. Now, this encompasses all of your strategies, doesn't it? We spoke about this before. and that's a previous episode for people that are new to this, but emotional intelligence is quite clearly the sort of cornerstone of good communication, and therefore good negotiation. But something I've also written down on here as well is we need to do another episode, and that is on
Look at
selling.
you, good at negotiating. You're negotiating another episode out of me.
Well, we've spoken about the negotiation, but we've not spoken about the sale, the selling part. So we need to talk about that in the future too.
Well, look, I don't mind that we're reverse engineering it, because actually that's not a bad strategy to have, is to actually start with the end in mind and work backwards. But, like the wrapper, the differentiator, the advantage is emotional intelligence. It's a performance enhancing skill set, and it's an intelligence just like all the other intelligences.
And performance enhancing in so many different areas. So like personal growth, if you're negotiating often and successfully, you'll be growing as a person. Your financial, your fiscal situation, it will be growing as well. But your confidence, all those sorts of things, or it will have multiple positive impacts on your life by doing this.
And for the people you're negotiating with as well. If you negotiate in an emotionally intelligent way, and a way that is beneficial for both parties, they'll have more willingness and desire to want to work with you and refer you to others and pay it forward more for more.
And creating that winning situation for everybody. You all want to walk away feeling like you've won.
Not at their expense, right?
No, exactly.
It's like feeling like there is enough for both parties to feel satisfied because of the context of the long term, without paying for the privilege. And I think that's the real challenge. And you'll never know. So afterwards, you'll never be able to go, well, go on then, how far could you have gone? What was the maximum you could have given me? No one's going to ever, because there's no trust, which is why in a psychologically safe relationship, people should be more open. But there's a whole nother topic there.
Well, I think we've already agreed now that we will be doing another one.
Love it.
That was amazing. And also I'm going to plug your new ebook. Is it out?
It is out. Was out on the 8th of May.
Where can people find it?
On LinkedIn, or they can get in contact with me, or on Amazon.
Is it for purchase?
Yes, if it's for purchase on Amazon. But if any of your listeners make personal contact with me, I'll see what I can do. If they make me a good traded offer, I'll see what I can do. Nothing's for free.
So
there's no such thing as a free lunch.
Nicole Soames on LinkedIn then?
Yes.
And diademperformance.com
That's right,
for your website. And reach out to you on there, and they can get a copy of the ebook. Fantastic.
Very good.
Well, that sounds brilliant for everyone.
It's a win-win-win.
Win-win-win, exactly. Thank you so much, and we've nailed it for time as well, which is fantastic.
Look at that. Professionals.
Perfect. Exactly.
Thanks
so much, Nicole.
All right.
Thank
See you again.